football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lines. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jimmy McGuinness in his life.
What's up, Ireland? The Irish are back in town.
I'm gonna stop this guy, I'm gonna finish this guy, this is my plan.
He doesn't want to be around me. He doesn't want to be around these people. He is petrified. And that's it. He said nothing in New York, and I guarantee he was saying while I wasn't here.
Saturday night, all question is gonna be answered Saturday night. Come on.
The traffic is a little heavy. There must be a McGregor fight going on. I don't know where the little fool is. He's better off running anyway. You know yourself, I bet you he was saying a load of shit up here. He didn't say anything the last time, so.
I'm angry, a little bit emotional, but my job when I go to the cage, I have to control my emotional. I have to stay relaxed, but keep going and maul this guy.
I am going to truly love putting a bad beating on this little glass jaw rat.
Who's on the proper whiskey? Yeah, man! Yeah! Only another couple of hours and I'll be on it with you.
Again, other whiskies are available. Conor McGregor there endorsing his next line of business once he gets out of the octagon and the ring for good at some stage. I'm delighted to be joined for our Saturday panel, which is about all things UFC 229, Khabib versus McGregor, by Irish MMA star Chris Fields. Great to have you with us. Kieran Cunningham of the Irish Daily Star, who I believe, have you ever been in the octagon?
I've never been in it, no.
There's still time, Kieran.
No.
There's still time. And Irish boxing legend, former world middleweight champion Andy Lee will give us his perspective on all the whole thing as well. By the way, I love the Waterford Whispers story last night, which said there was a 5,000% increase in Irish lads talking shite about McGregor in the last week or so. One of whom, and thankfully counteracting all that, Chris, was your brilliant take on the tactics of the fight with the lads here in OTB AM the other morning, which I listened to and much more enlightened as to what's actually going to go on. Maybe we want to chat a bit in general today, though, about the whole phenomenon and where it's come since the explosion of McGregor and everything else around it over the last few years. First of all, though, in terms of a McGregor fight, what's everybody's McGregor fight routine? Are we a three-piece suit and pocket chain, ride around in a limo with the lads, or do you stay up or get up in the morning? Or?
Proper number 12. On the, no, I have a 3-year-old son, so I tend to get up I'll wake up for the co-main event and the main event, and then I'll watch the rest of the fights the next morning. Yeah. Record. Staying up till 6 o'clock in the morning isn't really, and it's usually getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, so I'll wake up for both of those fights. I want to see that live. The UFC is obviously generally on that ridiculous o'clock because they're coming from America, and I'd only really ever watch the Conor fights live. The rest I record and watch the next one. There's something about a Conor fight you have to see live.
Just the co-main fight, by the way, that's a pretty significant one as well, isn't it?
Well, basically the winner of the co-main is going to fight the winner of the main afterwards. So it's nice to have both on the card. I think they set it up that way because Khabib, we're probably going to go into this later, but Khabib has had problems with weight in the past, so in case something happened and he pulled out, one of those guys would just step in. So they had a replacement there ready to go.
Kieran, do you get dressed up like Huggy Bear and go out in the town for a Conor fight, or is it pipe and slippers?
I haven't been around the town 12 years.
For any reason?
No, I'd be struggling to stay awake past 11 p.m. these days, to be honest. So if it's still on by the time I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll give it a go. But no, it's irrelevant what I think about MMA, if I'm a fan or not. But I have no knowledge of the sport. Chris will fill us in on that. But I do find the phenomenon fascinating because there's never been anybody like this in the world of sport. I know people compare to Muhammad Ali, but boxing was huge before Ali anyway. Boxing was arguably the biggest sport in the US all through the 20th century up till Ali came along. But this is a new sport, and he's far bigger than the sport. Would that be fair, Chris?
Yeah, I was actually going to speak about this today. I feel like he has, like obviously it's my sport, I adore it, but it pains me to say that he probably has surpassed the sport.
Yeah.
Which is never a great thing for a sport.
Yeah, because that's
that's bigger than the sport.
Yeah, because that would make me wonder what happens when he retires, because they do really need to have, well, not a contingency plan. You can't plan for who's coming, but to keep the sport, if they do want to grow the sport, they can't be hooking it all on Conor McGregor. No, because I know he's saying no, I'll take 5-6 more fights, whatever it is. I'll be a billionaire by 35, but it mightn't necessarily happen. Like, you might take 1 or 2 more fights. Like,
we've doubted him before, though. When he was talking to us about it being a millionaire, I used to be like, all right, man, because we're all just training in a dingy gym at the time.
How much is enough? Like, he might think after 100 million, I've had enough. I don't want to be cutting weight anymore. I've had enough of this. So we don't know.
We'll talk about his plans. It's an interesting area because he has I think it's an 8-fight deal, but I don't think they necessarily mean anything, those contracts.
But if he can't fight, he can't fight. If he doesn't want to fight, they can't make him, really.
But Andy, it's funny because we'll talk about the sort of explosion that happened in MMA in terms of its profile, and Conor being so driving that so much. And there was this whole thing that, like, this is a real challenge to boxing. Boxing needs to get its act together because MMA, the matches happen, the big fights happen all the time. Yet it feels that boxing, and I know it's got real problems in Ireland at the moment with significant issues going on. But in general, when I think about the Anthony Joshua shows or shows in the UK that Eddie Hearn is organising, that they've still been able to do nicely. Thank you very much. Is that fair enough?
I think it's been in response to the UFC that boxing had to step up, and the fighters have had to step up because, and also partly down to maybe mainly as well down to social media, because everyone has an online profile now and presence, and fighters can call each other out, and you can't really be seen to lose face in public if someone challenges you. And with the UFC coming on and these fights happening, the best fighting the best, and the big events, boxing has had to step up, and the fighters have had to also the TV networks have demanded it as well because of the UFC. Yeah. They see what's happening there, and that there's one recognised champion in each division, and it's a lot more attractive. It's a lot more approachable to people who are not hardcore fans, who are not purists, that they can just watch UFC and relate to, because it's just 2 guys fighting, you know what I mean? And it's usually the best fighting the best, so they know who the champion is. And so boxing's had to step up, and it has responded. And now I think it's hard to compare. Boxing, to me, boxing's a bigger sport because it's fought globally by a much more historically, and there's so many more competitors across the world. But it has improved because of UFC's presence.
Do you think, Andy, like I was just, watching the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder stuff this week and the trash talk going on and all that nonsense, and it's not the first time it's happened in boxing, we see it fairly regularly, but do you think, is part of that a response to the UFC, that they see the way this effectively sells tickets?
Was doing trash talk before.
Yeah, but has McGregor not taken it to a different level?
I think it's taken it to another level.
I think the real issue is with the trash talk side of things, and I was always a big fan of Andy's and how he held himself as well. But I am if you're faking it, it's terrible. Yeah. It's the worst. Yeah. It's like Conor's a natural at it, because I'd say he'd do it out on the road or something. You know what I mean? He'd talk like that. That's just I've known Conor since he was about 17. He was always lippy. He was always one of those lads. Ali's first nickname was the Louisville Lip, because he was the same. He was a mouthy lad in the gym. If you're faking it has to be
organic, because it comes across conceited if you don't.
But is there not a danger there as well, Chris, that that's part of Conor's persona, but some people think that's all there is. And you think, there's a great line of Yeats, how do we know the dancer from the dance? And sometimes it's just, this is an act, I have to do this. And you do hear things he says in quieter moments that you think he's a bit fed up with all this. Like I was reading quotes this morning, he was saying, one thing I'm sick of, more or less, are the media obligations and the weight cutting. Those are the 2 things that make me question where going the sport, which is interesting. And
as we said, he's done a lot less for this fight.
He has.
And wasn't there the famous thing about talking to Tim and Sue in Connecticut and some, rubbish TV channel to promote? He was fed up of doing every...
Because it's not like he can just come in and do a normal, straightforward interview. Everybody expects the performance. And that must be wearying after a while, I
think he's done something ridiculously smart here. So what he did is he did less media, but the fight's still gonna do bigger sales than he's ever done before. So then he holds the card that I don't need to do the media to sell the fights.
Yeah.
You know, and that's gonna ease him up. All they'll want is fight week from him from then on. Whereas before they're making him do world tours and all this kind of stuff. And
well, those two things, making weight and media, the bane of every fighter's life. And someone who's in his position, well, I don't know, being himself, he'd have to do way more than anybody else and more selling than anybody. It must be exhausting as well, even though if it does come naturally, it must be.
Because I think you referred to it there, that, and I remember talking to Katie Taylor about this before, because there's often the press conference, the final press conference of a fight week, is always the day before the weigh-in, which is when you're at a really low ebb. And like I remember being at Wembley Katie was on the Joshua bill. I think it was Nina Mankey she was fighting, but at one stage, like she was doing low-down interviews. At one stage, she went over to a step and just said to the coach, like, I know. She just sat down in her own and she was just staring at the ground. And she was just utterly drained. Like she finds weight cutting very difficult. And Conor McGregor talked about that this week, because he's expected to go in on Thursday. Was the press conference Thursday? Yeah,
press conference Thursday.
But on the big Friday, performance, the day before he's the weigh-in, which he's going to be really, really low ebb between everything, between your blood sugar, the amount of nutrients in your system, everything. Like it's not.
I think when he was making 145, that would have been much bigger issue. So he's up 10 pounds from that now. He's at 155 now, competing, which is going to make his life a little bit easier.
I think it's also a signal of how serious he's taking this fight. And he knows it's probably a big challenge, and it might be a one-round blast out for him, but it's still on paper, it's still a serious challenge.
I think this is
cutting all that stuff out. It lowers all the distractions, all the external things.
What is that like, Andy? You know, in terms of, I mean, comparable in terms to what you experienced. You've had this camp for however many weeks and months, all building up. You're presumably at a physical peak. You've got to do the weight cutting thing, which I imagine takes a huge physical toll, and then you've got to do that concentration of media. At the same time, you're, I presume, trying to focus your tactical plan, getting yourself mentally absolutely right. So you've got, is it an incredibly hard thing to manage, an incredibly stressful thing to get yourself into that?
It is. Well, it is, and you know what's laid out before you in the week of the fight. You know where you have to be and what you have to do. And there's always one or two extra things thrown in there, like, we'll just run here and do this interview with somebody else. They've got a slot on TV or somewhere on the radio and you have to run and do it. And really, obviously, since the fight is agreed upon, that's all you're thinking about. But you have like the luxury of time, so it's not that pressing. But during that final week, all you want to be doing, every decision you make is, will this help me? Will this benefit? Help me benefit in the fight? Like, is this to my benefit going into the fight? And everything else outside of that, if it doesn't,
people ask you the same. I feel like just get
it's autopilot. You're an autopilot. You're on autopilot. It's just after a while, it's like automatic.
He's a phenomenal showman, though. He can show up there, like you're saying, tired, hungry, and put on a show where everyone's screaming and shouting. Did you see if you see the weigh-ins or even that the final press conference? These are arenas that other MMA shows couldn't even fill. You know what I mean? And he's filling them for people to sit there and just look at him. That's where he's at.
And I imagine, like most great performers, he presumably feeds off the energy of a crowd like that, because I think he was giving out about the crowd not being at one of the press conferences earlier, because he's like, where are the fans?
He does his best work, like most kind of stage actors or comedians. He does his best work working off the crowd. So he picks up a line that they find funny and he'll play it more and more on the guy.
So there's his next. Never mind the whiskey stand up.
Yeah.
But isn't there a cult of personality there now, though, Chris, that the fans have bought into Conor McGregor to such an extent, it doesn't matter what he says. They just cheer everything.
And that's dangerous. And that's I think we were talking about it beforehand in terms of the lines he has crossed in his trash talk. I mean, there's the I'm going to bust you up stuff, but there's the the homophobic comments and racial stuff, and that he has that authority and that command over.
Do you think
he
regrets any of that? Because if you're for example, he came out in favour of the single-sex marriage referendum, which was, for some of his stature, fair play to him for doing it. But then he uses which people would say a homophobic slur in one of the press conferences. And do you think?
No, it wasn't at a press. It was backstage. He was walking with a friend.
Oh yeah. You're right. Yeah.
And he was
Yeah,
caught
of
on
course,
camera,
you're right. Yeah,
which is a very different situation.
Yeah, but do you think that that sometimes he goes, why did I say that? Like, would it, like any of us?
I suppose. I'd say in that situation, he's saying something he shouldn't have been saying, but he was saying it backstage to his friend, and a camera just happened to be in his face. I think the man's shown his colours on that side of things because he threw all his weight behind it, which was obviously a lot of weight, at the time, So I think to question that is a bit silly. He said a term that a lot of people of my generation would have used quite freely until recently. You would have figured out that it's not something you can say.
Okay.
I suppose the roundabout way, Chris, is what we're honest is what's he really like? So, but like in all seriousness, like the kid who came in, the 17-year-old kid who came into the gym. Was there always this kind of, and then you said like when he's start doing the whole Del Boy, I'm going to be a million. Next year, he had a certain amount of But did he always have that sort of?
He always had a bit of an aura about him.
Yeah.
I'm sure Andy has been around people like this as well. They just have that little thing, that little percent. He always had a little bit of an aura about him, and like kind of how he held himself. I think Conor thought he was a superstar before he was a superstar. Anyway, he's just one of those guys. So he did. He always had that kind of thing about him, and I suppose that's one of the things that makes him so good. He's so confident. He's so He's confident in his own ability, but he's confident in his own brain. He's confident in what he's thinking about is the right thing to think about, all that kind of stuff, which is a great trait to have as a fighter. Because when you start doubting yourself is when bad things happen.
And in all, I want to get to sort of back to the last time we saw him in UFC was kind of the peak of the initial wave of the phenomenon.
McGregor mania.
McGregor mania. But there was the negative stuff which we just mentioned, and what was he pushing buttons he shouldn't have been. But there's the stuff that probably doesn't get enough coverage in the general media, which is I imagine there's clearly the drive to train and work like he does. There must be a ferocious intelligence there to take on all the everything that goes into preparing for a fight and all the different disciplines that are involved in preparing for that level of the sport. Yeah,
and he's he's obviously even when you look at his physique, he's a ridiculously athletic man. Like he's like, I was saying this before, he's like the perfect build to be good at striking for MMA. Like he's like if I coach a lot of guys now, a lot of really good guys, and if you said to me like you could get a 3D printer and make up a guy, he'd look like Conor. He'd be similar to Andy as well, like a southpaw with a long reach, a lot of power. These are all amazing traits to have as a fighter. They make you very awkward to deal with. His reflexes are phenomenally fast, and then he has that little kind of grace movement about him as well, which a lot of guys that have power don't tend to possess. They tend to be quite awkward and they rely on the power. He moves quite gracefully and then possesses phenomenal power as well.
Text coming in now to 53106, or you can tweet us at Off The Ball. McGregor will win this fight regardless of how good Khabib's wrestling is. Conor may not be great off his back, but he can scramble. I've just lost it there. Scramble takedowns well, and each round starts on its feet. McGregor's footwork, timing, and explosiveness will accurately pick Khabib apart and stop him. Tony Ferguson is a tougher fight. So that's someone who's on top of his game. Andy, I wanted to get to you in terms of the fact that he's 2 years out of the UFC scene. In that time, he, of course, had the small matter of the Mayweather fight, which, I'd imagine the degree to which he would have gone into the boxing side of things would have been similar to, how he would have prepared for a big UFC fight. So what will he have gotten from boxing in that time, do you think?
He would have been, obviously, he's a year older, year wiser, so to speak, and he would have definitely gained from the experience of being in the ring. He would have been out of his comfort zone in terms of fighting in a different arena, so to speak, a different sport and a different discipline. And if he was good at striking before that, he'd be even better following it, because he would have had the whole camp and time before that just focusing on punching with his hands. And so if that's what his strongest asset, then it's going to be even stronger in this fight. And I go back to think that it really stuck out to me that he wasn't doing the media talk. It's in his interest to sell a fight, and obviously if he'll be getting a big percentage of the pay-per-view. So why wouldn't he? It only says to me, it speaks to me that he's taking this very seriously, and it means he's working very hard away from shouting around the place. And I always think we were spoken about earlier, when he says all these things at press conferences and weigh-ins, he's saying it out to in the public, but he's also kind of doing affirmation himself, you know, by saying it. He's putting it out there, so he has to back it up. And he's building himself up internally and mentally with his confidence by saying, I'm the best, I'm going to knock this guy out. All of that all that builds your resolve, and it builds you like your mental fortitude, and when like it kind of just builds up, and then it gets to a point where you never have those doubts anymore. You know, you don't even think about not doing what you've said, because you've hammered it home so much in your own mind.
It was interesting there. I heard an interview with Ariel Helwani during the week. Would he be well regarded? He'd be the number one. Yeah, he's the one like I would have heard of. Like, so basically he's very well regarded as an analyst within in UFC MMA. But he was making the point, he thinks Conor McGregor, he's nowhere near appreciated enough in Ireland. He said he should have the status of a Roy Keane type figure, and he doesn't understand the criticism he gets here, etc. And out of curiosity, I was just looking at the newspapers there, like we had 10 pages on the fight today, and a few of the other papers did, but the Irish Independent had a couple of paragraphs on page 10 on the League of Ireland page that was buried. Irish Times was on the back page of the sports supplement. It was fairly buried. That he is very divisive in the way, even if you look at terms of media coverage, it's fairly obvious some media outlets want to ignore him, basically. Whether others look on him as a cash cow, I would say.
Well, there's a text in here, I don't have a name on it, but it says, it's really worrying that this guy is being lauded once again after all of his antics out of the ring. And do you think that there is a certain sort of middle-class snobbery?
Yeah, I think
about what he represents, how he carries himself. Look, something deeper than
I can't sit here and offend the guy running up and throwing something at a bus. I can't. You know, I'm not even going to pretend to. But like, if you're writing about sport, that has nothing to do with you. Write about the sport. The guy's a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenom in the world for the sport. And like you're saying, sports pages are just ignoring him, which is just ridiculous. Ridiculous. It makes no sense.
It is. And I'm just thinking here as we sit, like, we've done really well in sports that are not so popular, like hockey recently, and rowing, you know, and both of those teams, the Donovan brothers and the other rowers, have been lauded, you know, and he's in a sport that's not so, you know, mainstream, but it is kind of, he's pushed it to the mainstream, if anything.
It is now.
I think it's maybe a class issue, but it's also a generational issue, because he definitely appeals to the younger people. He's
18 to 40 years generally, or well, younger even. But up to 40-year-olds.
We were talking about this outside. I'm not sure in any other decade Conor McGregor would have been his biggest superstar, but this is a kind of a time when, you know, it's a selfie generation, Instagram generation, when people like to mouth off, and you know, it's part of Donald Trump's appeal to people.
But you are who you project. You are. He's projected himself from an electrician.
In the past, whereas, you know, he has this remarkable story. At the start of this decade, he went for a job in a bookies and didn't get it, and he was signing on the dole. And within a few years, he's like one of the biggest names in the world, probably the biggest Irish name. Like and talking in terms of global reach and fame.
He's the biggest Irish athlete.
Yeah, because like I remember traveling all over the world.
He's literally probably, you could possibly say he's in the top 5 athletes in the world. If he walked down the street anywhere in the world.
And you'd make a good argument.
Because Roy Keane never the US. I was all over the world, and everybody.
The sport just wasn't that big.
Yeah, because everybody would say Roy Keane when you said you were Irish, but in the States he would have been.
No, he's arguably the most famous living Irishman.
He is.
I think Bono might be bristling in his bolt hole at that. How is he viewed, Chris, within the MMA in the sense of, you know, everything that goes around him? Is there any? I know there's an issue about UFC fighters and what they get paid, and did Conor really kind of take up the cudgel to help them out much? How is he viewed in terms of people within the sport? Do they kind of think like, oh, this guy gets so much press or attention, or are they like, great?
Yeah, and he's just brought more eyeballs to this. Like Andy said, he's like the sport's it's exploded in this country from where it was, you know, because of him, you know, and that just brings more eyeballs. That then, that filters down whatever way you want to do it. It still filters down that, like other pros are getting paid more to be on shows because there's more eyeballs now. So everyone's benefited from it. There's more options for amateurs coming through. There's as well, you can see like almost when I started, Conor and about 4 other people were in a kind of, like the gym was dingy, and they've always been my favourite gyms. You're probably the same anyway, you know, a bit of mould on the wall is nice, I smell of sweat. But it was dingy, and you know, that's where the hard work goes on. But the idea of getting there just seemed so far away. Like Andy obviously had come from a long line of high level boxers. We didn't have that. There was no link. Like, and he created that link now. And now any young lad walking into a gym can see a straight line, a straight road there. You know, that didn't exist before.
Just to remind you, the Saturday panel, by the way, brought to you with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Jenny on Twitter saying McGregor is bigger than boxing. Controversial.
It might be, as a brand himself. Yeah, he might be. I'm not here to champion anything. I'll run him down. Just accept it for what it is.
Mario on YouTube says McGregor to win by a knockout. And Kiani on YouTube says #Khabib time, soon to be 27. Oh, who is Khabib? What's his story? I feel like this has kind of been the perfect sort of simple marketing thing. So we got the mouthy puncher doing all the trash talk in one corner, the inscrutable Eastern European grappler in the other.
Who wrestled a bear?
Who wrestled a bear? You know, it's like it's pure, you know, Rocky stuff. You know, simple caricatures of people. But is that what Khabib is? Is he this sort of no nonsense
stoic? He's a phenomenal athlete.
And how good is he as well?
Yeah, he's a phenomenal athlete. A phenomenal fighter. He's He's 26 and 0. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. Like there has been patches if you look through his record, because like 26 and 0 can look really pretty, but there's patches where he's fighting guys with quite low records and picking up wins. Obviously that doesn't happen in the UFC, so that's them days are gone from. He's just ran through pretty much everyone he's fought up to this point. He has an ultra aggressive wrestling style. Kind of more like Sambo wrestling. So Sambo was a martial art from Eastern Europe. It's kind of a mix of judo and jiu-jitsu, so a lot of groundwork but big throws on the feet. So it's a lot of body lock grinding. Just he's a big Dagestani bear, basically. You know, he beats people into submission. Like, that's his style. So he's not flash, or, you know, it's beautiful to watch for someone like myself, but
where's the beauty? What are you looking at?
I love grappling. I love it. I adore it. So his style of grappling is very aggressive, take guys down, control. He does little things like when you're trying to get up, he controls your wrist to break you down, pins you, and then puts you in a position where you can't defend yourself. So the fight has to be stopped.
Is it impossible for McGregor to avoid getting taken down by him then? I presume at some stage he's going to be in...
No, not at all. I think a lot of the fight will be decided in the first minute or two who gets their game off. I think like Conor's distance management for MMA is phenomenal. Like he stays just out of range. So if you want to take someone down, you have to be able to punch them. So that's the way I'd look at it, even as a coach. You have to be able to land the hand on them to be in the distance to shoot for a takedown. If you're shooting from further out, you're telegraphing it, and you haven't set it up. So if we bring it like back to Andy, say Andy wants to throw a big body shot, he goes like maybe double jab upstairs and then throws their body because the guy's going to cover high. Same idea with a takedown. I throw hands upstairs to bring the hands up to come in. If he can't get into that range where he's making Conor, his hands are low enough to block the takedown, and plus then Conor has a nuclear weapon at all times.
Well, I was watching a little bit of a video of one of Khabib's fights, possibly his last fight earlier this year.
Alaquinte.
Yeah, possibly. But the way, I mean, it seemed impossible for him not to take his opponent down, because he was down like a rocket down. The guy's leg.
Yeah, he charges forward. But like you know, a lot of guys in MMA don't move as smooth. Like Conor comes from a boxing background, and as Andy was saying, he spent a whole year boxing. So one of his best traits was his footwork. That's only going to be better now. Only going to be better.
Chris, like the narrative in this fight is Conor has to knock him out with a punch, and if Khabib gets him to the ground, it's going to be over for Conor. Is that doing Conor just like a disjustice in terms of wrestling and grappling?
I think like Khabib has the edge in the wrestling. He's a better wrestler than Conor. Hope I don't get it in the ear off him for saying that, but that's the truth. If you watch the fights, if you watch the guy's skill set, that's what he's a phenomenal wrestler, right? But Khabib isn't a prolific finisher. It's a 5-round fight. He's not a prolific
he's gone
finisher.
the distance a few
and
times,
people generally tend to get back up and he takes them back down. So he's not a guy like that. He gets the guy down, that's it, fight's over. It's take them down, hold them down, beat them up a bit, and he's vicious in those positions, very heavy top, but his style is to keep you down, which means you're not gonna like really swing into shots, because if you overextend and you give it an opportunity for the guy to get up. So he tries to stay heavy, landing little shots over and over as hard as he can. So Conor is gonna have opportunities, you know, and Conor's takedown defense is pretty solid. I'm very interested to see the first couple of exchanges. You know, it's very hard for me to judge on previous fights because Khabib has just run through everyone. So I really want to see the two of them.
I watched the Michael Johnson fight, like a southpaw. He hit him like early in the fight. Michael Johnson landed a lot of left hands. Yeah. You know, and you see if
he's a very awkward stand-up Khabib. He's like robotic almost. You know, very amateurish.
Very square.
In terms of what happens with Conor after this tonight, whatever happens, Andy, are you remotely interested in seeing him fight and box again? I mean, I don't know. I'd find the McGregor.
I'd like to see him fight Paulie Malignaggi.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Just for the
entertainment value, you know. Yeah, I think I wouldn't. But outside of that, I don't. I wouldn't fancy seeing him fight Mayweather again. I don't think there's an appetite for that across anything.
Did you see enough in his Mayweather fight to say, you know, that's a decent boxer who, you know, as opposed to what he is in UFC, which is one of the most exciting people to ever contest the sport?
No, I would say he's got a long way to go in boxing. If, you know, to be at a good level, you know, to be at that world level. But I think a fight with Malignaggi is, because Malignaggi's well past his best as well. So I think he's
probably bringing big money. It'd be
they would talk.
It's interesting when you talk about, you know, the 2 years away from the UFC, and we talk about a fight like this and how, you know, he must be buzzing with the whole challenge of it, you know, getting how do I beat this guy and all that sort of stuff. I think the head of the UFC name, Dana White, said during the week he got bored sitting around counting his money. Yeah. Do you think with all we talk about Conor, I want to go in and make millions and get out and do all this? Do you think he'll be a guy who will find it hard to get to leave it? You know, like one of those athletes who this is the thing he was put in the earth to do. Yeah. You know, to walk away and count his millions.
I think that's a very good question. Like I can't give a pat answer to it because I clearly don't know. But you do wonder. In one sense, people think he needs the crowd and he gets a buzz of it. But I am seeing more signs, I think, that he's a bit weary of it. He's a bit weary that everything he does is a headline or there's a circus around it. But how does he get to live a quiet life again? You know, it's where do you go? Is there South Sea Island that people haven't heard of Conor McGregor? I don't know.
Would he want, you know, that's, and I guess I'm sure there's the same, probably in any sport, certainly a sport which involves that sort of intense moments of adulation and those intense highs that, like, where do you want, could you even begin to live like that, the quiet life?
A lot of athletes struggle with that.
No, absolutely. Like, there's been so many, you know, studies on it, books on it, documentaries. Like, life after retirement is very, like, people get addicted to the sound of the crowd. You know, they're really.
And it's more than that. It's addicted to the sound of the crowd, obviously, but it's the feeling you get before you go out, like the nervousness, all that stuff is like it's like the guys that jump out of airplanes, I suppose. That's my jumping out of an airplane. You know.
But like you see that with footballers who go into management, and they always say, no matter what they win, it doesn't compare to playing. Like
it's
the
the next
buzz
best
is
thing, but it's
competing
not
and playing and winning as a competitor, and you're never going to get that buzz again. But you wonder even, like, when do you have enough money? You know, that's a question. Like, how much money does anybody need? All it does is buy stuff and buy more stuff.
It's beyond money now, isn't it?
Yeah, and eventually you wonder, you know. Like, I can't imagine the motivation for Conor McGregor now is money. It's more about achieving as much as he wants. But like when you get that amount of money thrown at you, does that sap your hunger? Like, I look at somebody like Rory McIlroy and people say, oh, it's an issue with his putting or whatever. But I wonder, just has the hunger gone a bit because he's so wealthy now? You know, that the hunger he had when he was younger, when his father had to work part-time jobs to finance his early career, etc. That, you know, it's only a couple of percentage points that you might dip, but it can.
I don't know. I heard the line. I can't remember. It might have been in your chat with Ger and Owen earlier in the week, Chris, about, you know, Mike Tyson saying it's hard to get up. It's hard to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go running out of silk sheets. Yeah. Like, Andy, does it have to be like something beyond making a living, or is it about that moment that Chris talks about when your adrenaline is at an absolute spike, and is it really hard to walk away from that?
I would say when that bell rings, he won't know, you know, until the bell rings and he's in there and it's getting tough. That's when you'll find out how much you want it. Yeah. Because up to this point, it's still the same, you know, the buzz that He's always had, and it's always been a good outcome. But he'll know when he's in there. Like he came back from the Diaz fight. Obviously, he's shown then he probably had enough money then to retire before that that loss.
Yeah.
And he showed then that he had this heart and desire to come back and win the rematch. And you know, since then he's won fights, and now he's fought Mayweather. Now he's come back to fight the toughest challenge out there. So you have to say on the evidence that's there, he has the desire. He's not taking an easy route. He's not like living off his name and like taking so.
And the money, as you say,
he'll only find out when he's in there and it's tough and he's, you know, it's late in the rounds and it's getting hard.
You have to make a call.
Yeah.
Make a call.
Loads of comments coming in, obviously, on this. We're just going to round it up now. But Rosie on YouTube says, rooting for Conor, obviously, but can't see him winning. All Khabib has to do is walk through one of McGregor's punches. Easier said than done. And he'll stay low to avoid a heavy punch. Once Conor gets taken down, his gas tank is done. Will he last the pace?
I think Conor winning is early. He's going to do it in the first 2 to 3 rounds. I think I think if it goes to decision, it means that Khabib has got his game going anyway. So I think it means that I think Conor's game, Khabib won't last 5 rounds. If Conor's getting his game,
can Conor box him for 5 rounds? It's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And like you know, Andy's been very like smart in his analysis about sports all the time, and he'd understand there's a big difference between like throwing jabs in boxing, like throwing jabs and kind of moving. So in MMA, it's like you have to be like on all the time because something big's going to come, and you're trying to land bigger shots because the smaller gloves. So it's
Kieran Fortune on Twitter says the Irish media don't deserve him. When will Ireland get another sports superstar like Conor again? He's crazy, but who cares? He's ours. That's one perspective on it. I really hope McGregor wins tonight. I love his confidence. I think he's the greatest sports person in the world today. Siobhan from Killiney from Killiney. So
she'd read the Times.
There you know what's going on. She write to the editor of the Irish Times there, Siobhan. My social class has nothing to do with my dislike for McGregor. His lack of class himself is why I dislike him. Katie Taylor is just as phenomenal as an athlete in her sport, but she does not conduct herself like Conor. That's from Kieran. Stu on YouTube said Khabib looked very confident at the weigh-in. He had a look in his eye that suggests he knows he's going to win. Jonathan on YouTube says, I don't think there's any point comparing striking in boxing to striking in MMA. I mean, there's no eagle punch in boxing. Explain that.
I don't know what an eagle punch is.
We might find
There's none in MMA either, mate.
Mohammed on YouTube says Khabib's footwork is sloppy. Conor will make him run a marathon. Okay, final predictions then. Ask the expert first.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think Conor's going to win in the second round, and I think it may be an uppercut. I think he might land an uppercut as Khabib comes in, and I don't think he's going to have it all his way up to that point. I think he may have had to scramble up to his feet once or twice or whatever. It might be an Andy Lee right uppercut.
No, I actually watched Khabib fight, and I thought the uppercut. I thought last night we were watching him fight, and I thought he's open to uppercut. Oh. No, he's open to an uppercut. I thought, and especially from a southpaw, he could eat one. Especially when he's coming in for he's coming in for a takedown, he could take one. But he can be hit, so I think Conor is going to
Kieran, just agree with
I was just going to say, I agree with you, lads.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Whether you're staying up, doing the marathon, and getting dressed up and hiring the limo and going on the town, or like Chris and probably myself here, getting up with some little people running around your feet with a cup of coffee, do enjoy it. Thanks for joining us, Chris Fields, Kieran Cunningham and Andy Lee. Right, ads up after this, and then we'll be looking ahead to all today's Premier League action.
Listen back to your favourite News Talk shows at newstalk.com and on the News Talk app.
Centra is on a mission to help you live every day to its fullest. In store at Centra this week, we have some great healthy offers to help you live well.
Like Centra Fresh Irish Extra Lean Mince 330-gram 2-pack, half price at €3. Cully and Sully Soup Range 400-gram €2 each. And Deep River Rock Still Water 500ml 6-bottle pack was $3.45, now €2.
Log on to centra.ie to find easy workouts, recipe ideas and well-being tips.
Centra. Live every day.
The Republic of Ireland take on Denmark and Wales in the UEFA Nations League on October 13th and 16th at the Aviva. Secure your seat with an FAI season ticket, including entry to special events, exclusive promotions and competitions. It's time to get mad serious. It's time to get